Welcome back guys, Jimmy Jules here again with another CREY prop tutorial. In today's episode we'll be going over the SEEKER prop. We'll go through how to make a coin that follows you once you get in range. We'll also go through how to make an NPC, like this dog that we've got here that follows your player around. And finally we'll go through how to make a custom camera rig that follows your player. First of all we'll go through the settings. So up the top we have the speed option, which will define how quickly the SEEKER will follow whatever we've told it to follow. The next options down are the acceleration and deceleration options, and we can enable these to give our objects a slow speed up and a slow deceleration, rather than just reaching maximum speed immediately. The next option down will define what our SEEKER will follow, so we can set this to any player, a target prop, or to wired objects, but we'll go through these options shortly. We can also disable specific planes of movement for our SEEKER. So for example, if we didn't want our SEEKER to be able to move vertically, we'd enable the disable Y option. This would prevent the SEEKER from moving on the Y axis. Now let's go through some examples. Firstly, we'll go through how to make a coin that follows your player once you're within range. We're going to make our coin pickup. These are the props that we're going to be using for this. We have a sensor, a variable modifier, a destroyer, a lift, and a rotator. We're also using the physical gold coin item as well. Then to keep all of this nice and tidy, we've got a box it up box to put all of these things in after we're finished. Our sensor is set to detect any player, and we've got this at quite a small radius so that it's just around the coin because our coin will be traveling to our player anyway. I'm going to plug the detected output from our sensor into a variable modifier for our play coin sound variable, and this is because I'm using an audio effect as well when the coin is picked up. I went through this in the previous audio props tutorial, so if you'd like to know how to do that, you should go and check that one out. If you're not looking to use an audio effect, I would suggest replacing this with a currency modifier instead to add some currency to your player's currency balance. We're also going to use this detected output to activate our destroyer's destroy input. Our destroyer is going to destroy a target, and we're going to target the box it up box, which will contain all of our props. We're then going to target our physical gold coin item with our lift and with our rotator. You can change the settings of the lift and the rotator as you like, but one thing we do need to do for the lift mover is plug the target reach pulse output back into the switch input, which will cause the lift mover to go up and down rather than just reaching its target position and staying there. Now that we've configured all of our props, we can select all of them, including the gold coin item, press the B shortcut for box, and select the box it up box. We can then close this, and our gold coin item is ready, and if we unpause the game, we can see that bobs up and down nicely, with some rotation to it as well. Now you might be thinking, well, how does that follow the player? Well, at the moment, it doesn't just yet. To make that happen, we're going to need 3 more things. 1 more box it up box, a sensor, and a SEEKER. We've got our sensor's radius set to 3, as you can see here, indicated by the line. And all we're doing is plugging our detected output into the SEEKER's power. We've also got this sensor set to forever rather than while contact, so once the player comes within range of the coin, it will follow them forever and get faster until it reaches them. We've got our speed set to something very high here, but our acceleration set to very low. So this will mean that the coin slowly accelerates towards the player, and even if the player is running away from the coin, it will eventually accelerate to the point where it is faster than them to catch up. I'm then going to layer the SEEKER over the top of the sensor so that they're in the same vertical position. I'm going to select the SEEKER, the sensor, and the coin box, and then I'm going to box all of these objects in a parent box. Then finally, we're going to move our coin box so that the coin item is in the same location vertically as the sensor and the SEEKER. So you can see I've just got a bit of a sandwich going here with the SEEKER on top, the sensor, and the coin bobbing up and down in the middle. Having everything stacked vertically like this just helps with the coin's accuracy. Now that we've got all our things nice and tidy like this, we need to make the SEEKER affect our gold coin to move it towards us. All we need to do for this is just to glue our coin box to the SEEKER. So we just hover over our coin box, press the G shortcut, and then select our SEEKER. The very last thing we'll do is also target the parent box with our destroyer, so that we're not leaving any props around like our SEEKER and our sensor after the coin has been picked up. I've just got this coin spawning a bunch of times with a spawner prop, and then once I'm in range, they start to come towards me until they're in pickup range. This is just a nice little effect, and makes it so that your player doesn't have to run around picking up every single coin. Next, we'll go through how to make this following NPC that follows you around and is able to go up and down hills as well. Once they get close enough, they'll stop following you so they don't start pushing you around. And then once you're out of range again, they'll start to follow. So we'll go through how to make this now. These are the things that we're going to be using. I'll be using the pug item in this case for my NPC, but you can use whatever you like. We've got a sensor, a raycast, 2 if not gates, a calculator, a selector, a directional mover, a seeker, and finally a lookout rotator. We'll get the easier things out of the way first. We're going to move the sensor right on top of our NPC, and this will act as the radius of where our NPC will stop following us. So for example, once we're within this range, the NPC will stop moving. We're going to glue this sensor to our NPC. This way it will move with them wherever they go. We'll also grab our seeker prop, and we're going to move this above our NPC so that it's in the center. We're then going to glue our NPC item to that seeker with the G shortcut. So we're going to hover over the NPC, press G, and then select our seeker. We'll do the same thing with the lookout rotator, and we're going to place this above the seeker, just to keep things tidy. We'll also use one of our if not gates here as well. We'll open up the settings for our sensor and the if not gate, and we'll plug our detected output from our sensor into the if input on our if not gate. So now we're saying when our player is not in this sensor area, then turn something on. And what we want to turn on with this output is our seeker. So we're going to plug our not output from our not gate into the power of our seeker. We're also going to enable the disable Y option on our seeker as well, so that our seeker isn't in charge of moving our prop vertically. We'll do this manually with our raycast and our directional mover. This way the NPC will always stay on the ground, and even if the player is above them, they won't travel vertically upwards unless there's ground underneath them. This will make more sense when you see it in action. We need to make sure that we glue our lookout rotator to our seeker as well, so let's just do that now. And then we'll glue the not gate to our NPC so that it stays together. Then lastly, we're going to target our NPC object with the lookout rotator. So we'll hover over the lookout rotator, press the T shortcut, and then select our NPC item. And just with those props alone, we've now got an NPC that follows us around. However, when we hit a mountain, the NPC won't move vertically because we've turned on that disable Y option. You can see that without the disable Y option enabled, because the seeker doesn't know where the floor is, it's only following the player, it will disregard the floor's location and just follow the player, which means they can jump up weirdly into the air like that, which we don't really want to do. So let's go through making our manual vertical movement with our raycast. So we've only used these 4 props so far. The rest of these will be used for the vertical movement. Firstly, we're going to move our raycast, and we need to angle this in such a way that the cast itself is pointing downwards vertically. So you can see here, I've rotated my raycast prop so that the cast itself, indicated by the green line, is pointing down. We've also got our raycast length set to 0.5, and we're going to place this 1 grid space just above the floor. This is going to detect anything that's beneath it because we have it set to the any setting, and based on whether this is hitting something or not, we'll move our NPC up or down. We'll make this setup fairly simple, and we'll just say if the raycast is hitting something, then we'll move up, and if it's not, then we'll move down, so the NPC should stick to the floor. We're going to use another of our if not gates for this, and we'll plug our detected output from our raycast into our if input on the not gate. We're then going to use a selector and a little bit of math to decide whether our NPC should move up or down. So I've got a selector here with 3 ports. I'm going to plug the detected output from our raycast into the number 3 input on our selector, and the not output from our if not gate into the number 1 input on the selector. This means that when the raycast is hitting something, our currently selected output from our selector will output a 3 because we'll be switched to port 3, and if the raycast is not hitting anything, our currently selected will output a 1 because it'll switch us back to port 1. And we're going to use these 2 values to control our up and down movement with our directional mover. We'll grab out our calculator and plug our currently selected output into value A. We're going to subtract a value of 2 from that input. We're then going to plug the output from this calculator into the speed of the directional mover. So you can play through this a little bit in your heads. If our selector is on port 1, it's going to be 1 minus 2, which is -1, so it will move our directional mover downwards. And if our selector is on port 3, it'll be 3 minus 2, which will be 1, so our NPC will move upwards. We're going to angle our directional mover vertically as well, so that it only affects the vertical movement of our NPC, and we're then going to target our NPC with that directional mover. While we're at it, we're just going to select all of these props with the control key, press the G shortcut, and glue all of these to our NPC as well, so they all follow it around. Then the very last thing we need to do is move the raycast ever so slightly just off the ground. So for this, we need to disable the snap with the 5 shortcut, and then drag the raycast just ever so slightly vertically into the air, just like that. This way the raycast won't be active by default, and it will take a very small amount of downward movement to activate it. You can see if we enter play mode now, when the raycast is not hitting anything, it moves the character downwards. When it is hitting something, it will move the character upwards. Once the NPC is within range of our player, we want them to stop bobbing up and down and just stay still. So we'll use the NOT gate from our sensor, and we'll use this to power our directional mover. So this way, when the player is not in the area, it will turn our directional mover on. And if you've kept up till this point, you can see when we enter play mode now, we have our NPC that's following us, sort of bobs up and down as it's running along, and it stays on the ground. You can see that even if we jump above it, because we've got our Seeker set to the disable Y option, it's not affecting our NPC's vertical movement. That's all being controlled with the raycast. Because the raycast always knows where the floor is, the NPC will always stay on the floor. Finally, we'll be going through how to make a custom camera rig that follows your player around. I've got a camera prop in here, and it's following our player around with a Seeker. For this setup, we're only going to be using a Seeker prop and a camera prop. This spawn point is just here so we can get a decent reference of where the camera should be pointing. We'll jump into the camera test camera mode, and we'll move our camera into a position where we can see our character well. I'll be using this angle, but you can use whatever angle you like. We'll then jump out of test camera mode by right-clicking, and now we can move our Seeker into the position where our player will be. In this case, because we're using a spawn point, we can just line the Seeker up with the spawn point, and then the last thing we need to do is glue the camera to the Seeker. So you can see I've got my camera up here in the top right. I'm going to press the G shortcut, and then select the Seeker. Now when I hop into play mode, you can see that my camera is at the new angle, and it follows my player wherever I go. Seekers are obviously a really great way to make custom camera rigs. Anyway guys, that's just about all the examples that we have for today. If you've got any questions at all or just have something to say, definitely leave a comment. This has been Jimmy Jules, and I'll see you in the next one.